About 2 weeks ago, I brought you my favorite Dynasty buys at each position. Today, we're gonna do the opposite, and we're gonna look at one player to sell at each position. And make sure you stick around through the analysis for the specific trade suggestions that I'm gonna offer for each individual player. My name is Paul, this is Pure Potential. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, leave a comment, let's go. All right, like I said, we're gonna try to keep it short and sweet today and just stick to one player at each position. We're going to start at the wide receiver position with the man in the thumbnail, Marvin Harrison Jr., currently valued as the wide receiver 17, 48th overall player over on keeptradecut.com. This is, I guess you might call it a sell low situation in the sense that his value is lower than it was last offseason. I was out at that price. I'm still out at this price. Just looking back at the season that Marvin Harrison had in his first 9 games, prior to picking up that nagging heel injury, I'm willing to kind of throw out the back end of the season because he was limited. He was in and out of games. He wasn't running all the routes at times. But even looking at those first 9 games, it doesn't paint the prettiest picture. He had a 19.5% target share. It's actually down a bit from his rookie year. 20% targets per out run, 1.73 yards per out run, 12.5 points per game. He was 33rd in receiving yards per game. None of this is terrible, but it's just not really a big step forward from what he did as a rookie. And we can pin a lot of that on Kyler Murray if you want to do that. The problem is that Kyler Murray is currently the most likely starting quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals in 2026. The fact that the team moved on from Jonathan Gannon could indicate that they're planning to stick with Kyler Murray, try it out with a different coach and a different OC. They don't have a ton of other options available to them anyway. So I think Kyler will be back as the starter. That has not been good for Marvin Harrison thus far. And then you look at the rest of this offense. Trey McBride, he's the locked in alpha. He's the top target earner on this team. And then whether you think Michael Wilson is a better wide receiver than Marvin Harrison, which I honestly think is up for debate, he does exist. Right? He's not going away. He's not going to zero. Like, there was a legitimate year 3 breakout that took place last year. You can't just fully put that genie back in the bottle. So looking ahead to the 2026 season, is Marvin Harrison capable of burying Michael Wilson and elevating his game to the point where he's the clear second target in this offense? Because I think even if you were to remove Michael Wilson entirely, just hypothetically trade him to another team, I struggle to see Kyler Murray supporting Trey McBride as this elite top 2 tight end option and Marvin Harrison as a legitimate, high end wide receiver 2, low end wide receiver 1, something that would really justify this aggressive price tag on him. And that's without Michael Wilson. With him there, and he does have one more year on his rookie deal, the outlook becomes really murky. I really struggle to see the upside. And then further complicating things is the fact that Marvin Harrison has some weaknesses as a player. Most notably, he is not a good yards after catch player. Across 2 seasons in the NFL now, he has recorded just 3 missed tackles forced. And if you just look at all wide receivers with at least 50 targets, Marvin Harrison ranked 61st out of 76 in yards after catch per reception in 2025, and he was 76th out of 85 last year. In other words, just absolute bottom of the barrel yards after catch production. He's not making people miss. He's not running after the catch. And you can make this, this could be a chicken or the egg problem, but he has just 2 total design targets in his career. He's not getting these screen passes and gimme looks that a lot of other wide receivers are getting. So that's one limiting factor. But then you also look at the other side of the coin at contested catches, and he hasn't been very impressive there either. If he's going to be this downfield X receiver, big bodied guy, not necessarily going to generate a ton of separation, at least got to be good at the contested catches, and he just hasn't been so far. Going back to that sample of wide receivers with 50 or more targets, he was 64th out of 85 in contested catch percentage in 2024, and he showed some improvement this season. He came in at 39th out of 76, so kind of, in the middle, kind of average in contested catch situations this year. But even with some improvement, the overall profile here just does not scream fantasy upside to me. He is a downfield X receiver, not super active in the short passing game, not going to get screens, not going to force defenders to miss in the open field. And at least so far, he hasn't really had a lot of playing time or even success running routes out of the slot. So, he's this boundary receiver the archetype can work for fantasy. You think of like DeAndre Hopkins in his prime. He was a fantasy monster. But at least to this point, Marvin Harrison Jr. is not DeAndre Hopkins, not by a long shot, right? He would have to prove to be a far more target dominant player to make that work. And I know, ironically, DeAndre Hopkins had some success with Kyler Murray. Genuinely don't think Kyler Murray is a great fit for Marvin Harrison, like to unlock his actual ceiling. So just not a great situation all around. And none of this means he's a bad player. He has a useful NFL skill set. He does some things really well. I just don't see it translating to high-end fantasy production in 2026. So I would rather roster other players. But as far as trade options, I actually want to start with picks here. I would take most 2027 first round picks straight up in exchange for Marvin Harrison. Maybe not the absolute most stacked team in your league where they feel like a locked in bye week team, but any team that's sort of middle of the pack, maybe they're a playoff team, maybe they're not, I'm absolutely re-rolling with the pick, not only because I think that there's going to be really good prospects there, but just the hype around this class is going to be insane. It's going to give you a lot of leverage later on, and I'm totally willing to give up whatever hypothetical upside we have with Marv at this point, that likely translates to, low end wide receiver 2 production to lock in the high upside of that pick. As far as players, I would explore upgrading to someone like Chris Olave, Nico Collins, George Pickens, Garrett Wilson, and try to package like a second round pick or another player on your bench. See what it would take to get up to one of those guys that I think has a lot more, legitimate fantasy upside in the immediate future. Or you could just try to make a 1-for-1 pivot. I would take any of these players straight up over Marvin. I think you'd actually get a plus in some cases to make this switch. But I would rather have Luther Burden. I'd rather have Zay Flowers at wide receiver. I'd rather have Saquon Barkley at running back. And at quarterback, I'd rather have Dak Prescott. These are all guys that are ranked, very close to or even behind Marvin Harrison on keep trade cut. So I think you have a lot of options there. But moving over to the running back position, this market feels pretty efficient right now. Nobody really sticks out to me as a glaring must-sell player. But I think the running back I would most like to be shopping right now is Jonathan Taylor. He's the RB6 and 26th overall player on keep trade cut. And I just want to get this out of the way first. I was out on Jonathan Taylor last offseason, and I was very, very wrong about that. I did not expect the Colts offense to be as good as it was. I didn't think he was going to rip off a million, 70-yard touchdown runs, and he ends up scoring over 21 points per game when all is said and done. Absolutely elite number. One of the best players you could have last year. So that was just a miss for me. And this is not a case of, me just trying to double down on a take that was wrong. I've gone back to the drawing board. I've reevaluated things. And I think at his new price tag, Jonathan Taylor is the guy I'd be looking to potentially move off of right now. Right, just look at his season in totality. He plays all 17 games, leads the NFL in rush attempts, played the second most total snaps at running back. He sets career highs in targets and receptions, and he actually tied his career high in touchdowns. For a minute, it looked like he was going to smash that career high, and then, things really slowed down towards the end. And none of these stats are bad, obviously. These were all the ingredients of an excellent season. The problem I have with Taylor is how perfect everything had to be for his season to go the way that it did. Right? We saw over the first part of the season, more than half the season with Daniel Jones, this was the best offense in the NFL in terms of like yards per play, points per game, whatever. Once Daniel Jones goes down, weeks 14 to 18, Jonathan Taylor only averaged 13.1 points per game. That's like Jalen Warren, Ramondre Stevenson territory, just for a little bit of perspective. And, obviously I would not project the Colts offense to be in a situation as dire as the Phillip Rivers, Riley Leonard experience that we saw here late in 2025. But we also don't know exactly what it is going to look like in 2026. My guess is that they will re-sign Daniel Jones to be their long-term starter, and they're just going to hope he doesn't miss a lot of time. But he's going to be first year off of an Achilles tear. He's definitely going to be less mobile, and he could obviously be less effective as a passer as well. And Taylor needs the threat of that passing game in order to break off the big explosive runs. He needs that steady diet of goal line opportunities if he's going to rack up touchdowns, right? That's how he scores points. And to be fair, that's not unique to Taylor only, of course. Like all running backs if you're going to put up elite production, you need room to run and you need ample scoring opportunities. That's where elite seasons come from. You look at what happened to Saquon this year, right? The rushing lanes got smaller, the goal line opportunities reduced because the offense wasn't as effective, and we get a pretty middling season from Barkley. The reason I bring it up with Taylor and the reason I think he's a sell is because of all the running backs that are valued inside the top 50 overall assets, other than Christian McCaffrey, Taylor's value is the most tied to the expectation of immediate elite production. He just turned 27 years old, I think like literally yesterday, which is not old, okay? I'm older than 27. I'm not being an ageist here, but it is a lot older than the other running backs that are ranked around him. Okay, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Ashton Genty, Devon Achane, Amarian Hampton, Trevion Henderson, soon enough, Jeremiah Love. These guys are considerably younger than Jonathan Taylor. Okay, Devon Achane turns 25 in October, and everyone else here is at least 3 full years younger than JT. So that's a big difference when it comes to dynasty value. Okay, Taylor has reached an age where basically no matter what he does in 2026, he is going to be worth less next offseason. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube once a running back crosses the age apex. So all that being said, I am not telling you to panic with Jonathan Taylor. He's probably going to be a very good, maybe even an elite fantasy running back in 2026. That is not my point here, that he's going to fall off an age cliff, that he's going to decline as a player. I just think that as a borderline top 25 asset, there are probably better ways to utilize his current market value. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look here. The first thing I would explore doing is just upgrading at running back. Can you add something to Jonathan Taylor to go and get Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Ashton Genty, or even the rookie 101 to take Jeremiah Love? Can you reset that age clock with another elite running back that projects to score a lot of points? I think Gibbs and Bijan are always going to be hard players to acquire, but I think this is very doable with Genty and the 101. I mean, I saw Genty traded straight up for Jonathan Taylor very late in the season, like week 15, week 16. You're probably not getting that anymore, but you might have to add less than you think. And I would just by far rather have Ashton Genty or Jeremiah Love moving forward than Jonathan Taylor. The age difference there is dramatic. I think these players have receiving upside and they have all the same type of talent upside that Taylor does. Then looking at pivot options, guys that you could possibly trade 1-for-1, maybe even get a plus back moving Taylor. I would first look at Amarian Hampton. He was a first round pick. He has the size, the speed. He has kind of all the traits you would look for. And that offense should look much better in 2026 with Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt back and healthy. Hopefully Hampton himself can stay healthy, but I do prefer him to Taylor. You could look at James Cook, who is ranked, like half a dozen spots behind Taylor. And I'm not exactly sure why. He is slightly younger than Taylor. He scores points in much the same way with these explosive runs, touchdown opportunities, not catching a ton of passes. He's another elite talent. I'm not here to tell you he's better than Taylor, but he's certainly one of the better rushers in the league. And he is locked in with Josh Allen, unlike this Colts situation where you don't really know how things are going to play out in 2026. So I would actually have Cook just ahead of Taylor, like one spot, basically back to back. The market doesn't have it that way. There's a little bit more, brand equity with Taylor. I think you could take advantage of that. And then at quarterback, Jalen Hurts has surprisingly fallen to a point where he's neck and neck in value with Taylor in a super flex league. I definitely still prefer Hurts. And I would even take Trevor Lawrence, who really impressed me here late in the season. And then as far as tiering down, I don't know if you'd really call it a tier down if it's across positions, but I couldn't think of a better word. Sell Taylor for these players and get a plus on top. I love the idea of getting Colston Loveland right now in tight end premium, if that's still possible after his most recent stretch in the playoffs. Nico Collins feels like a decent buy low opportunity for him. And then if you want to go way down, I think you could get a very nice plus on top to turn Jonathan Taylor into Saquon Barkley and make kind of a similar bet on the offense rebounding, Barkley having more of those explosives, more goal line opportunities in 2026. If you're enjoying this video so far, go down below, hit the subscribe button, and keep yourself in the loop with all things Dynasty content this offseason, buys and sells, NFL free agency, the NFL draft. Gonna cover it all right here. You don't want to miss it. So make sure to subscribe, and let's get into our tight end sell, which is Jake Ferguson. According to Keep Trade Cut, Jake Ferguson is the tight end 11, 91st overall player. He's probably the guy whose ranking perplexes me the most, because Jake Ferguson didn't really have that impressive of a season. If you look at the games that CeeDee Lamb started and finished in 2025, that's 12 games. Jake Ferguson averaged just 32.6 receiving yards per game and 11.6 tight end premium points per game. Those numbers would leave him tied with Zach Ertz as the tight end 16 in points per game. The thing is, for whatever reason, everybody just remembers the handful of games that CeeDee Lamb missed, and Jake Ferguson was just the absolute PPR scam of all time, racking up ridiculous reception totals in those games. It brings up his year-long points per game by a significant margin, but the truth of the matter is that when Lamb and Pickens were both on the field, Ferguson was a distant third option, and he was not putting up a lot of big games. Sometimes he would find the end zone. Otherwise, he was very replaceable, and he's just not that good of a player. I don't know if that's a hot take, but I do not think Jake Ferguson is actually any good at all. Among 26 tight ends with 50 or more targets, Ferguson ranked 22nd in yards per out run. He ranked 23rd in yards after catch per reception. He was 23rd in yards per target over expectation. He was purely a product of a high volume passing offense with a good quarterback, where he was just, the third best option by default. And for a short period of time, he was the second best option. Is he a young player? Sure. Does he have some contingent upside if Lamb or Pickens were to get hurt? I guess. But fundamentally, he is an extremely replaceable player from a talent and a fantasy production standpoint, just, in the normal median projection of things. And at his market value, I would much rather pay a premium for an actually good tight end or just punt the position with some super cheap option that can probably give me similar production. If we just look at the weeks that CeeDee Lamb was healthy and in the lineup, Ferguson was outscored by Juwan Johnson. He was outscored by Dalton Schultz and Hunter Henry. And he wasn't all that far ahead of AJ Barner and Theo Johnson. So he falls into a very replaceable range where you can usually get these guys super cheap. And for some reason, Jake Ferguson is just valued way ahead of that group of tight ends. So if I had Jake Ferguson, I would definitely look at pivoting to some other players in his range. It's honestly hard to believe you could get some of these players, but they're near him on Keep Trade Cut. So I'm going to call them out anyway, just for you to see and do your due diligence. I'm going to start with Brenton Strange, who is frankly just a better and younger version of Jake Ferguson, who is facing inferior wide receiver competition. He just seems like a better asset in every single way than Jake Ferguson. So I'll take Brenton Strange. I'd also rather have Dalton Kincaid while we're still in the tight end zone. He doesn't play full time, but he's super efficient on a per route basis. He is with Josh Allen. That offense doesn't have a lot of weapons. I think had he stayed healthy the whole year, we'd probably view him a little bit more favorably. Still not my favorite player, but it does kind of highlight how disinterested I am in Jake Ferguson. Other names at other positions I'll throw out there: Michael Wilson, Ricky Pearsall, Jaden Higgins, Daniel Jones, Christian Watson, and DeAndre Swift. And then just one other consideration: if you want to move him for a rookie pick in tight end premium leagues, I'd be looking for the 205 or better. So kind of that early to mid second range. And I do think you can get that in a lot of leagues. And finally, we come to the quarterback position, where I want to talk about Michael Penix, the quarterback 26 on Keep Trade Cut, 93rd overall player. You might be thinking, he's already valued so low. Quarterback 26, there's only 32 quarterbacks. I hear you. I still think he's ranked too high. And honestly, I didn't see a lot of other quarterbacks that stick out as really obvious sells. I was going to say CJ Stroud, but whatever his value says is fake. He probably lost half his dynasty value just off of that recent playoff game. So we're not going to pick on him. We're going to talk about Michael Penix, who is spending the offseason rehabbing his third career ACL tear. He tore his right ACL twice in college, and he just recently partially tore his left knee ACL. Now, he was already not a mobile quarterback. I know he had a fast 40 time or whatever running in a straight line, but he has not been a mobile quarterback in the league, not a guy that rushes. That's certainly not changing. His GM and head coach have been fired and replaced. I know Kevin Stefanski was brought in as the coach. I didn't see if they have hired a GM. I don't know who it is yet. But regardless, the regime that brought in Michael Penix to be the franchise quarterback is gone. Now, the owner, Arthur Blank, he said, "I think Penix is our franchise quarterback." I'm not sure how much that matters or if it even means anything. He's not the one at the end of the day that is making the personnel decisions. Either way, I think the most likely path for the Falcons is they're going to try to make it work with Penix in 2026 because there aren't really any other good options on the market. Maybe they keep Cousins as insurance. Maybe they bring in another veteran like Marcus Mariota. He's been with the team before. Regardless, it's probably Michael Penix in 2026. Now, he's going to miss most of the offseason stuff with rehab, and I don't know for sure if he's going to be ready for week 1 or if he'll be 100% in week 1. The big reason that I'm pretty out on Michael Penix as a top 100 dynasty asset is that he was really bad when he played football in his first 2 years. So he's played 14 total games across his first 2 seasons. Now, when you're going into the offseason as a 26-year-old quarterback and you've only played 14 career games, that's already kind of a red flag. In those 14 games, he has averaged 196 passing yards. He's thrown 12 total touchdowns and 6 interceptions. So, not very impressive stuff from like a fantasy standpoint, from an overall production standpoint. And when we look at just 2025, quarterbacks with at least 50 total pass attempts, which, mind you, this includes guys like Josh Johnson, Riley Leonard, Tyrod Taylor, Tyler Huntley, and Max Brosmer. A lot of really bad quarterbacks this year had at least 50 pass attempts. There are 50 quarterbacks in this group. Of those 50, Michael Penix ranked 38th in completion percentage over expectation. He ranked 36th in deep throw percentage. He ranked 42nd in completion percentage. He ranked 41st in fantasy points hero percentage, which is like a big time throw rate. And he had the 5th highest off target percentage. I want to look at that a little more closely, okay? 5th highest of these 50 quarterbacks in off target percentage. That was only behind Brady Cook, JJ McCarthy, Davis Mills, and Carson Wentz. He did not play well in 2025. Now, if he was dirt cheap, and I mean like borderline free, like early last offseason, picking up Justin Fields for basically nothing, even though Fields had far more fantasy upside, I could see buying in because the bar that he would have to cross for a decent value gain at that point would be super low. But at this price, he still actually carries some legitimate value, more than I thought he would carry when he suffered that injury. And there are just a lot of other players I would rather have. As far as picks, I'd be looking at that early second range. And I think you can get those picks because people are so down on this rookie class. But, 201, 202, that's a smash. Anything up to 205, I'm happy to take for Michael Penix. And looking in the database of completed trades, there are actually a couple in there for future first. The 2027 first, the 2028 first. That seems like a long shot, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So do with that what you will. At quarterback, I'd rather have any of these guys that are all ranked kind of close around him: Matthew Stafford, Kyler Murray, and Daniel Jones. And if you want to pivot to a player that is not a quarterback in that same value range, it's a lot of the same guys I mentioned for Jake Ferguson: Jaden Higgins, DeAndre Swift, Brenton Strange, Christian Watson, just to name a few. But there are a lot of guys that I just think are more promising assets than Michael Penix at this point. Now, before we get out of here, I just wanted to list a few other players that I'd be looking to sell early this offseason, just to give you some more ideas, give you something to keep you busy during this kind of slower time in the calendar. I'm going to let you do the hard work. You can figure out what to sell these guys for. But if I was going to add some more names to this list, consider selling DK Metcalf, Kyle Monangai, Jameson Williams, Josh Jacobs, Bryce Young, and Woody Marks. Anyway, that's going to do it for today, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you for supporting the channel. If you enjoy my Dynasty content and you want to keep up with it throughout the offseason, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. It really goes a long way. And if you want even more Dynasty content, like weekly live streams, my top 200 Dynasty rankings, and more, you can hit the plus on the subscribe button or the link in the description. Check out the membership options. Either way, I'll be back soon with another Dynasty video, and I hope I'll see you then.